What's up, my doom scrolling friends? It's now time for more Siralim Ultimate. So what I had in mind was some beautiful butterflies flying around, bringing death and destruction via the Doombringer specialization. I'll show the build in the planner where I already drew some lines to show some of the interactions. As anointments, I'm using Kindling from the Hell Knight. This goes hand in hand with Crystal Lake from the very first Fae. Now I've just made some adjustments, switching out the Ascendant anointment from the Astrologer with Kindle the Flame to have infinite charges on my spells that interact with burning. This turns out to be quite impactful and maybe somewhat important. Fire starter, so enemies always have burning. This is of course one of the main ideas of this build. So a lot of triggers for Spooner's Other Breath, which of course will trigger 2 times via the Fae's innate trait. Ceaseless Flame makes it so that after enemies take damage from burning, they have a 50% chance to take this damage an additional time, and this one can trigger over and over again. And Ceaseless Flame has a pretty good interaction with Combustion, as enemies have a 20% chance to drop to the bottom of the timeline after they take damage from burning. Overheal, of course, to trigger healing effects while at full HP. This is of course important for anger management, which triggers on-death effects when on-heal effects are triggered. This is a somewhat important interaction as I want to trigger some woe explosions on 3 of my Faes. So eventually they might also revive, gaining plus 50% maximum health via Reforged. And this can of course happen over and over again. Okay, now we come to the one and only main trigger for anger management, which is called Sense of Purpose, and that one will be multiplied by the Fae's innate trait and Unbidden Miracle, same as Defiance from the Doombringer itself. The reason why I'm using only one trigger for anger management is some technical difficulty, as I was already toying around with more healing triggers but figured the FPS drops can happen pretty early in the fight and are way too crazy. So fights were taking ages. As a result, I had to really step away from multiple healing triggers for woe explosions. So in the end, there were some technical difficulties where I had to step away from the idea of multiple healing triggers. So speaking of technical difficulties, this is also somewhat true for the Torn Between trait that spreads creatures' innate traits on the entire team. In fact, this can happen over and over again, regardless of how many times a creature has gained the very same trait already. This is kinda not really cool, not really good, but it is how it is, and it might be patched in the future. So in an ideal world, this team build would get each innate trait only one time. So each Fae has each Fae trait, but in reality it spirals out of control pretty quickly, and the battle history is kind of overflown with like Torn Between spreads, and this is not really what I had in mind. Still, I'm using it, so maybe it will get patched in the future. And at the bottom there is a Rosé Fae with Outgrow and Pocket Frog, so it has a pretty high chance of boosting another Fae to the top of the timeline, so more Spooner's Other Breath might be triggered. That's it so far to the Siralim planner. Okay, so I made a little bit of an adjustment and switched out the anointment for infinite spell casts with burning spells for death rattle. This is of course for the reforged trait, so the maximum HP gainings aren't lost. Now let's take a look at the artifacts and some spells. So pretty much every phase going with boots. This is because I want to trigger the spell slot with Inferno, and this spell will increase the burning potency by 100%. So each Fae that has Spooners of the Breath has a potential to increase the burning potency of plus 150% in total. So the second stone goes with a trait called Bad Blood. So if my teammates get killed, enemies will receive the bleeding and the poisoned debuff. It's not very useful because the potency will not increase, but I'll take it. Next one goes with some purely stats again, and this time very high defense. I might switch that one out for some pure health again. Yeah, the fourth one goes with a lot of stats, and this time it's crit chance. I'm not really sure this can trigger on the woe trait, probably not. And there might be some line that isn't showing because the screen is not big enough. Probably bonus health, not really sure. Next one goes with a lot of speed also. So this one might also gain some momentum. Now the last one has some pretty high speed bonuses. This is of course to gain some momentum, as at the start of battle the Rosé Fae will not have the penalties from the other phase. So I can start with some spell castings and have a chance to push another Fae to the top of the timeline via Pocket Frog. Now let's take a look at those spell gems. So in context of spell gems, I'm using Raise and Gift of the Wild on pretty much every Fae. Raise as a pretty synergistic damaging spell, and Gift of the Wild so all my teammates are healing, which will trigger anger management, which will trigger the woe trait or those explosions, and my teammates get repelling, which might take a little bit of firepower from the enemies. The first Fae goes with Slaughter, so I have at least a little bit of control over the Torn Between trait, and in addition the Generous line will also help with that. Next one goes with Inferno, which is already on the spell gem slot on the boots, but still I can increase the enemy's burning potency even more. Next one goes with Life Orb, so more reviving mechanisms kinda helps here and there. Next one goes with Inferno again. Next one also. Then again there's a little bit of Life Orb, and that's about it. And of course, before I forget, the Generous line on the Life Orbs is somewhat important to stay alive, increase the burning potency, and trigger more and more woe explosions. Now we can start a little bit of grinding, but truth been told, the Blaze Fury is a little bit too strong, and I will do another attempt without all the relics, also because my levels on those are over 100 or roughly 100. So yeah, for purity reasons, I'll also do some grinding without those relics. Well, usually, mostly, the fights and pretty much turn 0 because of the Blaze Fury, dealing an absurd amount of damage. Not so much right now. Let's check battle history. Yep, there it is. The Blaze Fury dealing 4.6 billion damage. And that is of course a bit like it's taking away firepower from the actual build. And in addition, there's like one issue that I don't like. It's like Torn Between triggers a little bit too often. Yeah, one entire screen full of it. Again, hopefully this gets changed in the future. So ideally, each of the teammates only have one trait of the other teammates. Yeah, might be best. Now, in addition, if I'm not mistaken, this is already difficulty 9, and yeah, I'm a little bit feeling weird because like the Blaze Fury getting all of the work done. So let's jump to a grind without the relics and decrease the difficulty and see how it goes. Okay, so it's now the very same team without all the relics and the very same realm and stability bonuses, item bonuses, and so on. So let's see how this one goes. Kinda close, considering how wonky the start of the fight was. Yeah, let's go back to fewer game difficulty levels because doesn't feel great, to be honest. Or let's jump to the Gate of the Gods right away. So at the gates I had some pretty cool fights. All the stars are the ones I won. I had actually 0-1 fights before. Let's go with this one. By the way, no relics. Does not seem like I can get to Life Orb. Lots of frozen and snared. Well, looks like I'm just getting demolished. I had 0 actions so far. First one right now. Loads. Oh my god, it's actually working. I mean, haven't won yet. Holy crap, dude. Let's try Generous. It's been a while since I have tested the gates with this build, and I think mostly my fights were kinda wonky, but mostly wins. Okay, this one was more convincing. Well, spellcasting a bit too important. All right. Okay, so far to the Gate of the Gods, and in general, this build is like, well, after some adjustments, it's now like 80 or 90% of what I had in mind. Like this Doombringer butterflies causing explosions and chaos, and, well, in addition now the burning effect. I am pretty satisfied with this one. I mean, it's winning on difficulty 9, so I guess couldn't be any better, even though some parts I might have misunderstood. There might be some min-maxing with the relics, even though Blaze Fury and Mutatias are like already kinda insane. Mutatias giving +1 additional turn, so that's kinda crazy with some phase, but okay. Now, in addition, currently I am very invested into a tower defense called Gnomes, and I guess in some days there will be a huge content update for this game, and after that I will investigate some of the new items and whatnot, and then I'm gonna do a guide for this game. Also because I've already played over 100 hours of Gnomes, so there is at least a little bit of expertise, and potentially this game will maybe become my favorite tower defense like ever, even though it's kinda tough when Bloons TD6 exists, but we'll see. Thanks for watching, I'm out, see ya in the future, bye.